Hello and welcome to BBQ School 102 with Big Nate BBQ. And today we are going to be talking about how to smoke your first pork butt. And for those of you who are wondering, you might be wondering, well, what exactly is pork butt? Is this really the rear end of the pig? And the answer to that is no. I mean, it sounds like you're cooking the rear end, but you're not. The real pork butt and where it comes from is it actually comes from the shoulder area right here. Okay, it's also known as a Boston shoulder, a Boston butt. And, you might hear it being referred to as pork shoulder just generally speaking. So, this shoulder actually gets a lot of work, and that's why it's well suited for low and slow cooking. Now, you might be wondering, well, where does the name butt come from? And it turns out that butt actually refers to a unit of measurement. Now, back in colonial New England, pork shoulder being a, not very desirable cut of meat was put into barrels, which were called butts back then. So now you have the term Boston butt because it was a New England specialty. So I guess you could say that you had a buttload of pork. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Now, I love pork butt. And pork butt is one of the most delicious things that you can do low and slow cooking with. I mean, it's just, you can eat it plain like this, which you really can't beat. Let me turn on my pointer. Now, you can do it just plain like this and hit it with some sauce, eat it with some pickles and onions, and just eat it plain like that. You can make pulled pork sandwiches out of it, hit it with more sauce, got a Hawaiian-style sweet bun on there, with some chips, pickles, and onions, and my mouth is watering right now as I'm looking at these pictures. And you can even make pulled pork tacos, guys. This is one of my favorite ways. Have a nice little beer on the side too, a little Corona. Wow, that's a great way to make pork butt. And there's nothing like eating nice, tender, juicy pork shoulder or pulled pork. So let's get into some of the equipment you're going to need. Now, the first thing you're going to need is a thermometer to tell the temperature of the cooker. Okay, this is one of the things that is going to make a huge difference on the cook. I personally use a ThermoWorks smoke, which goes for about $99. I know that is, I've been smoking and cooking meats like this for a while, so I decided to take the investment and just buy it. I got it on sale for about $85 though. It was 15% off. But it normally runs about $100, and so I know that might be a little bit out of some people's budget or how much they want to spend if they just want to kind of get into this. So you can also buy a deep frying thermometer at Walmart or Amazon, anywhere from about $5 to $10. And then you're just going to want to clip that to the vents, and then you're going to want to tell the internal temperature of the cooker. The reason for that is because you really need to know how hot you're cooking at in order to make sure you don't cook too quick and dry out the meat. Or, if your temperatures, that's what happens if your temps are too high, right? So you're going to be cooking too hot. Your meat's going to come out a little bit drier, a little bit more burned. It's still going to taste great, but it is not going to be as moist as you would like it. On the flip side, if your temps are too low, then it's just going to take you more time to cook. All right, and so these are cooks that last for 9-10 hours, so you might be adding on another 1-2 hours if it's not progressing. So and then I also use 1 bag of Kingsford Original Charcoal. For this, you're not going to use the whole bag, but just get yourself a bag of Kingsford Original Blue Charcoal. You can use the professional briquettes as well. Stay away from like the Ready Light or Easy Light style. Just get yourself original Kingsford Charcoal. It's some of the best stuff out there. Should you use lump charcoal? That's another debate. For your first cook, use charcoal. Aluminum pans. You're going to want this for the water pan as well as to catch the drippings on the bottom if you want. But you will mainly want this for the water pan. And then a heavy duty aluminum foil. So you're going to use, now the thing is, when it comes to pulled pork and cooking a lot of different meats on low and slow is that you're going to want to wrap the meats, okay? Because after a certain point, the meat on the exterior becomes black and crusted. So once it becomes black and crusted, you don't want to hit it with any more. It's not going to absorb that much more smoke. And wrapping it also helps to speed along the cook and to maintain moisture. So you want heavy-duty aluminum foil to wrap it, and we normally wrap about halfway through the cook. Bamboo skewers. Now, you want to use bamboo skewers to poke the meat as you're coming up to the end of the cook to probe for tenderness. Okay. I do have an instant read thermometer that I use to probe for temperature, and because it's a metal thermometer, or the probe is metal, you can slide it in and out, and you can gauge whether or not it's done based on how much it feels like butter when you push it in and out. Now, if you don't want to buy yet another piece of equipment, right? This is the whole point here, is that we don't want to spend too much money. So if you don't want to drop another $85 like I did on an instant read thermometer, and then you can just go to the store for $1, buy a whole pack of bamboo skewers, and when it comes to the end of the cook, I'll show you, you're going to start probing to see how easy it pushes in and pulls out. A spray bottle. Okay, now we're going to use a spray bottle because while we're cooking the meat, we want to keep the exterior a little bit moist, and so every now and then we're going to open up the lid and we're going to spray the outside of the meat. So get yourself a spray bottle from Walmart. These are cheap, like $2 or $3 things. Just fill it with, and I'll tell you what we're going to spray it with on the next slide. You want grill tongs. I'm not really sure where you guys are, if you guys like to grill or not, but get yourself a pair of long grill tongs. And then you're going to want a fire starter cubes. You can get you don't need fire starter cubes per se. You can get fire starter, like fire starter, what's it called? Like little pieces of like grass or stuff like that. I don't know what it is. They're like natural light, stuff. But anyway, you get yourself a fire starter cube. We're going to throw that into the cooker to get the charcoal going. Now for the ingredients. We're doing this pork butt Texas style. Probably the best way of cooking this pork butt is Texas style. So it's going to be kosher salt and coarse black pepper. You do not want to use table salt because table salt is very fine and you could end up over salting your pork. It's kind of hard to do, but yes, you can if you use fine salt or table salt. And coarse black pepper. Just get coarse black pepper. There's also fine black pepper. Do not get fine black pepper. Just get coarse black pepper. For the spray, it's going to be 1 part apple cider vinegar and then 1 part water. So, it's the apple cider vinegar is kind of optional. I like it. I like the acidity that it imparts to the meat. But, I've also sprayed with just water before, and they both turn out really good. As for the pork butt itself, if you're wondering, should I go bone in? Should I go bone out? I do recommend getting it bone in, just because it cooks a little bit more. It's more compact. When you go boneless, I've noticed that sometimes when I buy these boneless pork butts, the meat, when you're cooking it, will take on strange forms. Like the front part might start to curve up due to the muscles constricting in the heat. So you end up with this funny looking like black alien thing in your cooker because part of the meat has decided to pull itself up. Probably the way that the shoulder was meant to work. It's pulling up as it's tightening up. So you get, it becomes very, very awkward looking. So I would go bone in, and I would target at least a 7-pound pork butt with the bone in. I would say 7 pounds. I like bigger butts. I like maybe 9 to 10 pound butts. Just because if you're going to be spending a lot of time cooking, you might as well get some more meat out of it. And the yield, it will go down in weight after you cook because it'll lose water and blood. So a 9-10 pound pork butt might come out to be more like 6 to 7 pounds. So keep that in mind. Now, we know everything we need to know, so let's go ahead and get cooking. Okay guys, so here we are with our 9-pound pork butt. I got about 2 tablespoons of salt and 2 tablespoons of the pepper right here. And it's, like I said, it's about 9 pounds. It's got good, fat all around. It's looking pretty good. And, you can see the bone right there. That's what I was talking about. You got that bone there. And all we're going to do is just literally, this is the pork butt right out of the bag. Didn't do any trimming to it. Didn't take anything off, any of the fat cap off, or I'm not removing any of that stuff. I cook my pork butt just the way it comes out of the bag. Now, for this salt and pepper, you can put it in a shaker, you can put it in a shaker and you can kind of shake it over if you want, but I feel like it's simpler to just grab, pinch, and then apply. And you can apply pretty liberally on this, it's a 9-pound pork butt. You can throw a bunch of this seasoning on top and you're going to be okay. And this is going to help with the formation of having a nice black bark. And that bark tastes really good when it comes off the cooker, but you just want to start seasoning it like this. Now, also, one other thing that I want to tell you guys is that we're going to be cooking on the Weber kettle. And if you saw BBQ School 101, you notice that I use fire bricks, and that is to prevent the heat from the charcoals to actually hit and cook the meat through direct heat. So the only place that this is going to cook is when I put this on the kettle, the heat is going to come over the top. And so if you ever heard, well, if you ever heard the question of should I cook fat cap up or fat cap down, the answer to that is not about, well, I want the fat to render during the cooking process to come and baste the meat. The answer really depends on, well, is the heat coming over the meat or is it coming under the meat? And so as we're cooking on a Weber kettle, the heat comes from on top of the meat. So that's why we're going to cook fat cap up. So the same goes for you guys. If you're cooking on the Weber kettle following along, you got to cook fat cap up. Now, also one other thing is that if you're going to be cooking fat cap up, you want to season the bottom side first because you're going to flip it over, right? If you do with it fat cap up, you season the fat cap first, you flip it back, you season the bottom, you flip it up again, you actually lose some of that seasoning on the bottom of this tray or whatever you're seasoning on top of. So I'm just going to season this and we'll get back to you guys when it's ready for the cooker. And as you can see, I'm going pretty liberal on here. You know, it's not just like one little medium thing. I'm throwing it on until it becomes a pretty thick layer of this rub. And don't forget, we're gonna do the sides here. Obviously I can't because I got a camera in my hand, but don't forget the sides, and then we'll flip it over and then we're gonna season the whole thing. All right guys, here we are after we've finished rubbing down the pork butt. And something to keep in mind as you're rubbing this down, as you're seasoning, and as you're throwing the salt and pepper on here is do not rub the butt, okay? You don't want to rub the butt with the seasoning, you want to pat the butt, okay? So as you're throwing down some seasoning and you get a good layer on there, you want to pat the seasonings in. If you rub, it clumps. If it clumps, you get salty little bits here and there, and then you get some naked pieces of the pork butt. So pat that thing in, pat the meat, and then that way you can kind of just push it in where it's at. I know it sounds funny because you actually don't rub the rub in, you pat the rub in. Okay, so like I said, I mean, this is just a mixture of salt and pepper. If you look online, other people will put like sugar in there, they'll put, you know, chili powder and paprika in there, that's fine, but to me, the best way of making pulled pork is Texas style. Salt and pepper, I mean, you can't go wrong with that. So we got this on right here. We're gonna let the meat kind of soak in the salt and the pepper and let it just sweat a little bit for about, 10 minutes while we go and we get the fire started. All right guys, so we're about to get this all ready for some low and slow cooking. These are some charcoal briquettes that I had from a leftover cook last time. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna be smoking today with some cherry wood. And I'm just going to throw in a few good lumps down here. Get a few nice sizes of a few good pieces. I think we've got, let's see, some of these small ones here. Let's go ahead and throw down about one more medium-sized piece. Or a few. Okay, so we got about, I think we'll take this. We got about, two good sizes of a wood here, and then 3 of these smaller pieces. We'll call this 3 total. So 3 good pieces of cherry wood, and we're putting them right in the middle. I'm going to pour some more charcoal on top of that. Alright, let's go ahead and pour some charcoal in. And there ain't no sense to counting here. You don't need to count how much charcoal you're putting in. Just throw down until you've got enough charcoal to cover the top. Let's see here. Got the charcoal going down in one hand. And that ought to do it. Alright, there's a good amount. Alright, so we got about as much charcoal. I kind of filled it up just to about the top of these bricks here. So, this charcoal definitely will last a few hours. So you want to get yourself these. These are some lighter cubes. It's like $5 for 24. It's a great deal. Absolutely great deal. And all we're going to do here is you want to pop one of these cubes out. Come on now. There you go. You just pop one of these out. Throw it down here. Okay? Throw it down here. We're going to light it up. Now, the basic idea of this style is you're going to light one end here. It's going to get hot. and the fire is going to spread throughout all this charcoal here for the duration of the cook. So that's kind of the idea here of low and slow. We're going to light one end and it's just going to work its way down to here. Now, as we get down to here and we need some more time, what do? Well, you open up the lid, you throw more charcoal in and fill it back up to the other side. Right, so that way you can kind of work down one way, then go back the other in case you do need more time, or if you're going to cook more than just one piece of meat. This is what we're going to do, and now we're going to get the fire started. Alright, let's go ahead and get this lid up and just light that lighter cube up. Just like that. And then, you just want to put some charcoal kind of on top of it without smothering it. Get yourself some long tongs like that, and then you can kind of mess with it that way. And you're going to get a nice burn here. Get those charcoals lit up just like that. Start stacking them up there. Don't smother the dang thing, and you'll be off to the races. Just like that. Got a nice little fire going on that cube. And we'll give this about 10 minutes or so to light, catch on fire. We'll put the meat on. Alright guys, as you're waiting for the fire to start up, like I said, you want to use a water pan, so you want to boil your water and get it hot before you pour it in, because you'd be surprised if you pour cold water into the water pan, you'd be surprised how quickly that can change the temperature inside the cooker, which is why it's so important to have a thermometer to tell you how hot the cooker is on the inside. Because I've used cold water before, and you can take the temperature of the cooker down by 20 degrees easily just with cold water in the water pan. So heat up your water before you put it in the water pan to keep the temperature hot. Alright guys, we got the meat on right here. On this side, we got the charcoals lit. They're starting to ash over a little bit, as you can see. We're going to go ahead and pour our hot water into the pan. This is about 3 cups worth. And we're really going to try not to look at the pork until about, about 2 hours in, maybe 2.5 hours is when I'll have my first look at the pork butt. And the whole reason why you want to put the water pan in there and fill it with water is to allow for better moisture inside of the cooker, especially on these Weber kettles. Okay, these Weber kettles, there's more chances and opportunities for direct heat cooking. And that's why you want to put this foil pan on top, is because you want to prevent as much direct heat from cooking the meat as you want as possible. Okay, you don't want any kind of direct heat that cooks the meat, because that's the whole point of barbecue. You're basically cooking it via convection the same way you would in an oven, where the heat kind of bounces around the dome before it finally escapes out through the vent. So we got the water in here, we got the pork butt in here, and just for reference, I've closed the bottom vents to just a sliver of a tiny crack open, maybe about this much. Okay. Now, I'm going to get my ThermoWorks Pro, my ThermoWorks smoke set up, which is this guy right here. And this is going to help you monitor the actual temperature of, this is going to help you measure the actual temperature of the cooker right next to the meat. So I got the probe right here. The meat's, right next to it. So I'm measuring the actual temperature of the cooker right where the meat's at. Go ahead and, I actually forgot. Now, this ain't no sponsored video, all right? I'm not being sponsored by ThermoWorks. It's a great product, and I think it really helps, and it's a very valuable thing, knowing exactly how hot or what temperature the meat is at and what temperature the smoker is at. Plug this in here, and now I can see, one second. Now I'm going to start to get some readings about how cold and how hot the meat is and all that. 46 degrees in the meat, 113 inside the cooker without the lid on. And now we're just going to let that convection cook. Let that heat start to get to work. Now you always want to keep the top vent open. Don't ever close this unless you really are struggling to keep the temperature down low. Target temp today, anywhere from the 250 to 275 range. You don't want to go, you can go more than that on pork butt, but I like 250 to 275. Takes a little bit more time at 250, but in general, you're gonna, it's gonna be a good cook, not cooking too fast. Like, keep the top vents open unless you're hitting 315, 325. At that point,
you can start to tamp the vents down on top, but always, generally speaking, keep the top vent open because you want the air to continuously escape out from the top so that you can get clean, fresh air coming in from the bottom. It acts like a vacuum, right? So the hot air rises out the top, and then the clean air comes in and then forms a smoke. You got the convection, the heat bouncing around all over the top. Now, one more thing is, let me speak to this here, thermometer, okay? Now this is a thermometer that comes on the top of some of these Weber kettles, and as you can see, this thing is reading supposedly 200 degrees, okay? That's the surface temp near the top of the lid. Now note what it says here, 124, barely 125. So, you know, this is the lid temperature. Keep in mind, the sun here in Arizona is 105 degrees, 110 degrees. It's hitting the thermometer, it's making it act funny. The other thing is that it's directly over the coals, right? This is the side with the coals. So this side is obviously going to be a lot hotter than this side. So the coals are definitely acting more on the thermometer than on the meat side. Why Weber decided to do this? Well, it's probably because they weren't thinking about people who use their Weber kettle for smoking. Maybe people who just, I don't know, why would you ever put it there? Beats me. But, so, and those of you guys that if you bought a deep fry thermometer, or if you bought a candy thermometer, you know, this is where you want to go ahead and insert it there without touching the meat. Just clip it onto the end of the vents there. Just right there. Make sure your lid's tight. Okay, so this is what we're working with here. The meat is on. It's about 133, so we're, you know, it's coming up temp pretty slow. It's not coming up quick by any measure, by any meaning of the word. So it'll take some time to get up there to 250. You know, if it hits 275, I'll let it go to 275. I don't really care that much, but we will be back in about 2 hours to spray. Okay, so make sure you have a spray bottle. We'll be back in 2 hours. We're going to spray this thing down and just check on it. Alright guys, we are 2.5 hours in the cook now. It's 269 degrees Fahrenheit. And I did close the top vent because we were running to about 300, 310. And I did get a little bit, you know, I decided to come out and close the top vents a little bit. Not too much, as you can see. I closed them by about maybe a quarter of the way. So there's still a lot of air that's able to escape out. So this is my first time looking at it. And let's go ahead and see how it's doing. Oh yeah, that crust looks good. We definitely need some more water. We'll go ahead and throw more water in there. Went with a little bit more water this time because we went through pretty quick, was my guess. So we're looking more at about 3.5 to 4 cups this time. And the color on the pork butt is looking really good. It's starting to get dark. Just feeling it. I want to take it just a little bit longer. I think about another hour or 2 hours will be good. It's starting to dry out a little bit on the surface, so we're gonna hit it with some spray. And the spray that I got right here is 1/3 cup water to 1/3 of a cup of apple cider vinegar. And we're just gonna hit the surface of it a little bit. Make sure it stays moist. So we're getting a nice mist here. And I think what I'm gonna do, what's wrong with my spray bottle? So here we're just gonna hit it with some spray on it. And we're just gonna get it with a little bit more like that. The whole reason why we want to spray is so that we can keep the surface moist so it can continue to absorb just as a little bit more smoke. The wood, there's still a piece of wood down there that's burning and giving off smoke, so it'll continue to absorb. And so that's why we want to spray it a little bit. Alright guys, so I went ahead and covered it back up because it was getting really hot and the charcoals were starting to light up and there was fire coming from the bottom. So I went ahead and covered it up. I tamped down the top vents because I don't want it to get up to like 330 or 340, which it's possible for it to do because, you know, you open the top of the lid there's a bunch of air for the coals and they heat up and it might jump 50, 60 degrees, and I don't really want to dry out my pork that much. But generally speaking, it's looking pretty good. It's got a nice brown color. It's not to the point where I'm really happy with the bark yet. So we're going to push it out to another maybe 1, 2, possibly 2.5 to 3 hours and really let the bark set in and have that nice crusty feel. You can kind of scratch the bark a little bit, and if it peels off a little, you know, just scratch it gently with your fingernail. If it comes off a little bit, you know it's not ready yet, and when you scratch it and it kind of sticks or it's hard to scratch off a little bit, that's when you know you're about ready to wrap. So we're about, you know, 281, and it's climbing. 281, 282. You know, so it's going up. It's not going up quick, so I think we're going to stabilize in a few degrees here. And we're right in that 250 to 275 zone. It's a little hot, but you know, it's only off by about 7 degrees. It's not the end of the world. You don't got to worry about 7-degree difference here. But yeah, I mean, all in all, it's coming out pretty well for about 2.5 hours in the cook. The crust is forming really well, and something that I do want to talk about is the water pan, right? People say the water pan, you know, sometimes people poo-poo water pans. They say, you know, you're using that as a crutch. It's because you don't understand how to control the temperature. Well, the use of a water pan is not to, you know, as a crutch to control the temperature. It's really to keep the environment inside the cooker moist so that the smoke absorbs into the actual, into the meat. And that's also why we spray it down with a little bit of liquid, because you see, having a moist surface absorbs the smoke a little better than having it dry and crusty. That's why you spray. That's why you keep a water pan inside, so that you keep it humid inside, so the smoke can adhere to the meat and give it a really beautiful smoke ring. And then also take on as much of that smoky flavor as possible. And then, right when it gets, you know, a little bit, when the crust starts to set just where you like it, you wrap it up to prevent any more smoke from getting in, and you push it through, and then it cooks all the way through on the inside. So we're going to check on this in about an hour or so, and then we're going to spray it again, see how we like the bark. If we think it needs more time, we'll leave it in for another hour, and then we'll probably wrap it around that point. So 1 more hour, and then we'll check on it. All right, guys, we are sitting at about, I just took the lid off, so the temperature is falling, but it was around 260. You can see that this fat cap right here is starting to tear. As the meat begins to shrink, the fat cap also starts to tear a little bit, and so it's getting to be a nice color. As I scratch, I'm able to remove a little bit of the salt and pepper on the top there, and so I'm going to let it go for about another hour. It's starting to get dark and start developing the crust that I really want, but it's not quite there. It needs a little bit more time in the cook, and we're looking at about 3.5 hours into the cook so far. Still got a ways to go. The internal temperature right now is 152, 153, so we're going to be coming up on the stall pretty soon here, but I'll talk more to that in a little bit. So let's just continue to spray the outside, not let it get too dry. With this apple cider vinegar here, really want to hit the edge. Hit the edges here, because the edge is right there. The edges are where they tend to burn the most, so you want to hit the edges like on this side. Hit that. I am definitely spritzing quite a bit here, but I'm okay with over spritzing on a Weber kettle because it's a lot closer to the heat source here, unlike you know, my Smoky Mountain right there, which is a lot further away, and there's a heat shield in the middle. So you know, again, you can tell on the edge right here where it's poking out that this meat here has gotten a little bit darker than its neighbors. And so we're just going to spritz, and as you can see, I'm running out of water to spritz. But you can see here on the side there, closest to it, it's also taking on some really nice color. So I think we're just about good in terms of spritzing. Then I'm gonna get the lid back on. We'll check back on it in another hour or so. And I'm out of juice. Alright guys, so we're looking about time to wrap right now. As you can see, one of the indicators is that this fat cap here has not only split from just the top half like it was earlier, but it's split all the way down here. So you can kind of tell by that. The crust has definitely set. I'm just scratching it lightly. It's got a wonderful color. None of the salt and pepper is coming off, or not very easily. So it's definitely right where I want it. It's got that great color. I don't want to take it and keep it unwrapped any longer for fear that it might lose additional moisture. So I have my spray here, got some more apple cider vinegar, and then I've also got some butter in here. And essentially when we wrap this, the fat that continues to render off is going to baste the pork butt inside of the foil. So we're going to give it a little bit more moisture. So we're going to spray it down with a little bit more apple cider vinegar, let it baste in this juice here, and then of course the butter, it's going to give it a nice little butter bath as we continue to cook it in the foil. And actually I'm going to lift it up and then hit it with some more apple cider vinegar as well. Just going to lift it up, and I'm just going to spray the bottom a little bit here and there. Alright, we're good. Hit it all around. And now, for the best part, gonna get some of this butter here. It's starting to melt in this hot sun. Just throw a few pieces on, just like that. Now, some people put brown sugar in this step, but I'm not. I like keeping my pulled pork kind of savory. Not really too much sugar. I like my ribs with some sugar, and I will put brown sugar when it comes to ribs, but for my pulled pork, I like to keep it savory. But if you decide to put brown sugar at this step, I'm not going to blame you. It's going to be wonderful as well. So we got a little butter bath going on here, and this butter is going to mix in with the pork. It's going to create some wonderful flavors. It's going to create some wonderful juice and baste itself in this butter as we continue to cook. And you're going to notice that I have a double wrapped foil here. Let me just spray it down a little bit more. Great. All right, so you notice I have a double wrap, and you just want to wrap it up real tight so that you don't get any leakage out. So I'm going to wrap it up, and then I'm going to put it back on to the cooker. Okay guys, so we got the pork butt all wrapped up in a double layer of foil. Keep the opening side up. You don't want to flip it around in case some of the juices spill out onto the bottom, and then you're not going to have that wonderful juice at the end. Okay, so now let me just explain really briefly why I like to let the crust kind of build up to be a little bit darker and blacker before I actually wrap it. And that's because as it's basting, right, in that butter, in that juice, and as the fat continues to render and as water comes out and makes more juice, the bark is going to soften up a little bit. And I like my bark to be crunchy, and I like to have a nice crunchy bark. When you wrap in foil, it softens up a little bit, and that's why I like to push the bark a little bit further along, and then I wrap it. So I can continue to keep the moisture inside, but then I'm also going to get some of that great bark flavor, that great crunchy, crispy bark. So it's really up to you. If you don't really care about bark, you know, you can wrap earlier than me. You can wrap, you know, when it starts to turn a little bit darker brown, but not fully black. I like to wrap when it turns fully black and the crack along the fat cap starts to really widen and get in there. So it's really personal preference, but for me, that's kind of why I do it the way I do it. So we're gonna get the foil pan back on here. We're gonna put some more boiling water in there, put it back on. We're gonna keep on cooking for about, 3-4 hours. And at this point, you could honestly put it in an oven, but I already got this here, so I'm just gonna keep on going here, and we're gonna ride this out for another 3 to 4 hours or until it probes tender. All right guys, so the cooker is 290 right now. The meat probe says it's at about 200, so we're gonna go ahead, pull it off, probe for tenderness, and see if we're ready to let it rest and get to eating it. Okay, let's go ahead and unwrap this bad boy right here. Be careful with it. Smells absolutely wonderful. Oh, I don't want to tear it in case I got to put it back on the cooker, and I don't want to have holes in this thing. But it was temping at 200. There's some of that butter, that juice sliding out. Let's get a look at this thing right here. Oh my Lord. Would you look at what we're working with here. Woo-hoo. Okay, let's go ahead and check this out. It is falling apart in there. And it ran a little bit hotter, but hey, if it's probing tender, just like butter, reading about 198 there, pull it up a little higher, 193, 195. I mean, at this point, I'm not really so concerned with, wow, oh my God, that is just, that part right there feels a little tougher, but it is at 204, so I'm calling it good. It doesn't need any more time. I mean, you're just seeing how that thing just slides right in, and then it slides right out. I mean, it's done, and it's ready to eat. Alright guys, so we're gonna go ahead and let it rest up. I got it in this foil pan right here, so we're just gonna kind of let it have it loosely covered a little bit, just like this. So we're gonna, make sure we don't have it closed super tight, shut tight, but there's definitely some room in there. Let some of the heat escape. Gonna let it rest for maybe about half an hour, 45 minutes, and then we'll get to eating this. So just let it rest so you have some air able to escape. So it's gonna rest, cool down a little bit, let it calm down, let it reabsorb some of that juice, some of that liquid on the inside that we saw there. And then we're gonna get ready to get into it, pull into it, and hey, hit it with some sauce and eat it. It's gonna be amazing, guys. It looks super good. I mean, if you could just smell this, oh man, it smells like heaven. You can already see there's a little bit of pink there from the smoke ring. This looks like an amazing pork butt. I mean, I'm hungry, my mouth is watering, but we got another 35 minutes to go. And you can see what I mean when I say that the bark kind of softens up. It's definitely not nearly as tough as it was. If you scratch this, it'll definitely like split right open. So that's why you really want to take the bark all the way to, a little bit crustier and darker, and then you want to pull it back because it does get a little bit softer. So anyway, that's about it, and I'll see you in about half an hour. Alright guys, so we got the pork shoulder here. It's time to eat. It's been resting. It's still warm to the touch, and of course, we got to get the bone out first. See if we can get this thing out. Oh, it didn't slide clean off. Unfortunate. Well, it looks like we still got it to come off right here. Just a little bit of fat sticking to it, and it looks really juicy. I'm just gonna lay that down there. Just go ahead and start pulling some of this pork off. It's still steaming. Wow, that's unbelievably juicy. Wow, I mean, you can just see the juice still up in there. That's something else. Let's just keep on twisting this up. Oh man, this is so good. It's getting away from me. It's trying to run. Ooh, hot dog, guys. This is something else. So it looks incredibly moist right here. I think it could have been that butter bath and just sitting in here steaming. I mean, it's just sitting in a pool of its own juice right now. Oh, good Lord Almighty. Look at that juice down there. Woo! Oh my God, some pulled pork sandwiches. Eating it straight. Oh my God, look how juicy that is. That's unbelievable. Alright, you know what? I gotta have a little taste of this myself. Let me get some of this darker looking meat. That looks pretty good right there. Alright guys, I'm gonna go ahead and try this out. Wow. Oh my God, it's so tender. Holy cow. That's some incredibly tender pulled pork. I mean, you can just see the juice that's still left in here after it's been cooking. And if you can buy bear claws, or you can just go in with a pair of tongs like this and just kind of pull it out and pull it down. I think we're good for now. And I'm gonna throw this into some tacos. And I'm gonna show you what these tacos look like after I pull a little bit more. With these beautiful long strands of pork. Oh my God, it's so porky. Great flavor. You see the smoke ring on there? That's developed on the outside there, right there. That's some nice pink on there. Can't beat a good smoke ring. Oh my God, you can just taste the fat in the pork. I mean, low and slow. Guys, there's nothing better than low and slow. All right, I'm gonna finish pulling the rest of this off camera, and we're gonna put this in some tacos. All right, guys, I know I said I was gonna do pulled pork tacos, but we had some buns left over, and I just had to enjoy it in a sandwich form, so here we go. That's what it looks like. And the sauce that I'm using is just some stuff that you can get from the grocery store. Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. Pickles on the side. Plain white onion. I'm gonna go ahead and flip my sandwich right side up. Put a quick toast on it. Check that out. Unbelievable. That looks insane. That's a huge sandwich. Let me get a bite. Wow. It's so moist. The smoke, the flavor of the salt and pepper mixing together, wonderful, tremendous. I mean, it's just amazing. You can actually see here, when I was pulling the pork, I actually like shredded it and chopped it in half. It was so tender, I just kept pulling it like this, ended up cutting it in half. So guys, this pulled pork came out really good. Try it out. And I know it will not let you down, guys. Alright guys, I just finished eating, but I thought I would share with you another quick tip. When you're making your sandwich, okay, don't pull the meat from the top here where it's starting to dry out, alright? Pull your meat from the bottom. You see all that juice? Pull your meat from the bottom and put that on your bread, and you want to eat that. That's the best part. It's soaking in its own juices. It's staying, you know, moist and tender. You put a pickle on your bread, you put some sauce, and this is, I mean, guys, just do exactly what I did in this video, okay? Double wrap, give it the butter bath, do all that stuff, and you're gonna have absolutely outstanding pulled pork for your family and friends.